In tonight's stories, love and family twist into something unrecognizable. A carefree girlfriend leads her boyfriend to a roadside carnival where the games are blood rituals in disguise. And a man wakes up to find a son he never had, a wife he never married, and a life that isn't his own. Two tales of devotion, deception, and the nightmare hiding behind the ordinary. Welcome to Nightmare Proof, where true horror comes alive. Here, you'll hear real stories of the strange, the disturbing, and the unexplainable. Turn down the lights, get comfortable, and prepare to face the darkness. The roadside carnival Bailey seemed like the perfect girl, a real angel sent from above. I met Bailey at the farmer's market. She was selling handmade soaps and dancing around in a dress that looked like it might have started life as a pair of curtains. I was selling eggs and vegetables, something I did pretty regularly on the weekends, and she took to me right away. Next week, when I came back, she had set up her stall right next to mine, and I guess we really hit it off. After that, we began dating, sort of. Bailey never used labels. She said they were restraining. She preferred to call us partners, and I have to say, she really broadened my horizons. I was used to my dates being at the local steakhouse or at the creek while I fished, but Bailey was into nature walks and making stuff. We spent afternoons making soap and candles. We would take edibles and then go on long hikes, and sometimes we'd just drive for hours listening to music or talking about old times. Most of it was just us enjoying each other's company. Bailey was very adventurous, and it was nice to get out and see things that I probably wouldn't have sought out on my own. 2 months after meeting, Bailey was living with me as well. Bailey didn't have a lot, just a pull-along trailer and a lot of materials for making things, and it all fit pretty snugly in my garage. We spent a lot of our time just tooling around, seeing the sights, and doing whatever we felt like. It was nice, but I learned one thing about Bailey very quickly. Bailey was impetuous and prone to flights of fancy. It didn't matter where we were going or what we were doing. If Bailey saw it and she wanted to have a closer look at it, we were stopping. We've stopped at too many farmers markets to count, multiple yard sales, and she stopped me on the way to my cousin's funeral so that she could check out what amounted to a tourist trap. I didn't really mind. We were the best-dressed pair at the state's largest totem pole. It was fun going on our little adventures. Sometimes we mixed these with substances that led them to be hazy when I tried to remember them, but a lot of the time we were just out enjoying each other's company, and that made it all worthwhile. It happened one afternoon while we were driving, as so many things usually did. I was telling Bailey a story about my childhood, and she laughed suddenly, which caused me to ask her what was so funny. "It's you, Mike." "Me?" I asked, not really getting it. "What about me? I swear, I don't know how you lived before me. All of your stories just seem to be you, doing normal things. Haven't you ever done anything impetuous before me? Didn't you ever go on an adventure before I came along?" "Well, of course we did," I said, a little defensively. "We went and did things, saw stuff, and did all sorts of— I don't mean like vacations," she said, and it almost sounded disdainful. "I mean, like just went and did things because you felt like it. Like, just stopped to eat in a roadside diner because the exterior looked cool. Or went to a state park you were passing just because you wanted to see what it looked like inside." I thought about it and shook my head after a moment. No, I guess we never did. My parents were kind of generic, I suppose, and we just never really did stuff like that. "Well, how about it? Are you ready for a real adventure?" I laughed. "Haven't we gone on enough adventures yet?" "We seem to go on adventures all the time." She smirked, and as usual, it was equal parts amusement and disdain. "I mean, like a real adventure. I'm not talking about safe adventures, like a farmer's market or a garage sale. I'm talking about somewhere where you're not sure if you'll come back at the end of the day. I'm talking about a real Tolkien adventure, with elves and orcs and strange food, the whole shebang." I had to think about that for a minute. I had always played it safe. I didn't eat at weird restaurants or stop at places where I didn't know the crowd, and it always kept me safe. Hanging out with Bailey, though, showed me that I might have been a little too locked into my habits, and maybe it was time to try something a little different. Maybe, like Bilbo before me, it was time to go on a real adventure. And just where are we supposed to find this adventure? Bailey gave me this odd look, like a cat contemplating how best to get a rat, and when she pointed at a side road off to the left, I realized she had been planning this all along. Take that road for about a mile, and then I'll let you know where to go from there. Where are we? But she held up a hand to silence me. No questions. We're on an adventure, remember? It was around lunchtime when we started out, the two of us planning to go down to Dolly's for hamburgers and fries, but it was nearly 5 o'clock when she said we were getting close. We'd stopped for gas about an hour before I saw it, and Bailey still wouldn't answer any questions about the destination. I didn't know what we were getting close to, but when I saw the handmade sign for a roadside carnival, I figured that had to be our destination. It was August, and roadside carnivals were at a premium right now, it seemed. Most of them put ads in the circular, though, and didn't just leave signs on a half-abandoned roadway in the hopes that people would find them. I started to protest, but she was right. We were on an adventure, and adventures were rarely scheduled. We pulled up outside this little cow pasture, maybe 30 acres in all, and it was amazing what they had managed to do with so little space. It was like the carnivals I remembered from when I was a kid. It was one of those haphazard roadside attractions that you sometimes see thrown up out of nowhere. There were little tents with curiosities in them, a small corral for some malnourished animals, and a few rides with that barely hanging on sort of look. The whole place looked like it had just appeared out of some health department officer's fever dream, and as I killed the engine, the look on my face must have been far from enthused. "What?" Bailey asked. "If you just wanted to go to a carnival, there are half a dozen around here we could have gone to. We needn't have gone so far from home." "Those are safe carnivals," she said with a wink. "These carnivals aren't like the ones you'll find off Main Street. These carnivals are the kind that you find in internet posts and Reddit stories. These carnivals can get a little out of your comfort zone, but they're always tons of fun. You're coming, right? Or are you going to be an old fuddy-duddy?" I didn't want her to think of me and some old fossil, so I told her I would go, and off we went. I probably should have been a little bit suspicious, but there didn't seem to be any reason to. Bailey had never really struck me as the dangerous type, and I didn't think that she would get me into any trouble that we couldn't get back out of again. The carnival was exactly as run down as I had feared it would be. The rides made noises like they were just barely working. The animals looked like they might have mange, and the curiosities seemed more like badly done taxidermy. It all seemed very held together by shoe leather and happy thoughts. The carnival workers were just as disreputable looking, and there were more orcs than elves, it seemed. All of them were missing teeth, and more than a few of them seemed to be missing fingers. They all leered like they couldn't wait to get a look at our cash, and I found myself clutching Bailey a little tighter than I strictly needed to. I was not opposed to having a little fun, but this was a lot outside my comfort zone. These people could be criminals, and we were just getting ready to walk right in, and I looked down at Bailey, and it was like she could read my mind and did not approve of what she saw there. I buried my misgivings and started trying my best to have a good time. We rode some rides and had some fair food, but the longer we stayed, the more things stood out. What made me nervous was the way the carnival people kept looking at Bailey. They didn't leer so much as they looked at her the way you look at people when you know them or you recognize them. Their smiles were a little too big, and their hellos were loaded with understanding. I know how that sounds. It sounds paranoid as hell, but I was starting to feel a little paranoid. It felt like they had expected us, and I wasn't sure these were the kind of people I wanted to be expected by. Bailey just kept telling me to relax and have fun. She even offered me an edible to calm me down, which I refused. The longer it went on, the more my senses started tingling, telling me that something wasn't right here. I wanted to go home, but I wasn't going to be the one to break first either. Bailey had made it pretty clear that she thought I was a stick in the mud, and I didn't want to prove it by getting goosey over some offhanded looks. By about 8 o'clock, my back hurt and I was ready to go home. I told Bailey as much, and she begged for just a little while longer. She said she hadn't been to one of these carnivals in a long time, and she just wanted to hang out for a little while longer. I told her I was ready to go, and I could see it on her face that she wanted to call me an old man and ask me if it was past my bedtime. I finally told her that I needed to go to the bathroom and that I was going to go look for a porta potty. Bailey rolled her eyes, clearly having guessed that I was uncomfortable, and I went searching for a toilet while she went searching for more adventure. Thank God I did, or I might not have made it out. I was sitting in the porta potty, pants around my ankles, as I tried to figure out what I was going to do, and that's when I heard them. I didn't know them, but I assumed they were carnies. That might be an unfair assumption, but they just sort of sounded like carnival folk. They had thick accents and seemed to be discussing some event that was coming up. I didn't have a lot else to listen to, so I craned my neck and tried to hear what they were discussing. "How much longer until we spring it?" one of them asked. "You know as well as I do how this works," the other one said. "They have a good time, they ride the rides, they eat some fair food, and then we spring it on them. By then, they're too tired and full to do anything. That's how we always get them. That's how we've always got them. And if it ain't broke, we ain't likely to fix it. He don't look like he's gonna put up any fight no ways. He's big enough, but he looks plain as milk. I doubt he even struggles before we." But they moved off then, and I lost the rest of the conversation. My blood ran cold. It sounded like these guys were getting ready to rob us, or worse. Who knew what they had planned, and I realized I had left Bailey unattended. They might have heard her while I was gone, and that thought had me hiking my pants back up and heading back out into the carnival. It wasn't until then that I realized how few people were at this thing, and how most of them looked like the same carnival folk that I had just heard discussing our fate. If there were any other passers-by here, then I didn't see them. That didn't bode well, and I was more intent than ever that we needed to leave. I started looking for Bailey amongst the crowd, but I couldn't seem to find her. All the people here were smiling a little too big as they watched me pass, and it was weird to be the focus of that much attention. You know how you can just feel it when someone's eyes are on you? Well, that was how I felt, and I didn't much care for it. It was very unsettling, and it made me think that more than a couple of them might be in on this scheme. I was coming through the midway when I saw the group of them, the lead man pointing at me as they made a beeline for me. There were 6 of them, 2 of them big old bruisers in the kind of thing Teamsters usually wear on mob shows. They were making their approach, trying to look casual, but it was all too apparent who they were coming for. Maybe they had already gotten Bailey, but I wasn't going to do any good if they got me too. I ducked between 2 stalls, keeping my head low as I tried to get somewhere a little more public. That was made all the harder by the fact that no one else seemed to be here. It was like trying to blend in an empty field, and I finally ducked down behind one of the abandoned Midway booths and tried my best not to be seen. I must have been doing a pretty good job of it, because the group went by with a lot of dark, mumbling, and more than a few glances to see how I eluded them. I had just thought about standing up when I heard an all too familiar voice and was glad that I hadn't. "We lost him," said a deep, raspy voice. "I told you guys not to lose him," Bailey said, and hearing her talk about me like that made my neck prickle. "I've spent the better part of 3 months getting him on the hook, and all you guys had to do was grab him when he got out of the bathroom. He can't have gone far. We'll find him," said the gravely voice. "You'd better. The ritual is in 3 hours, and there'll be hell to pay if we don't have him." They moved away, and I was left sitting there, wondering just who I had been dating for the last few months. What ritual were they talking about? And what sort of people were they? I had thought they all seemed a little too friendly with Bailey, and now it made sense. If this had all been some kind of elaborate ruse, then I had fallen for it, hook, line, and sinker. I had to get out of here. I had to get away before they were able to do whatever it was they were planning to do. A quick peek up over the stall showed me that there were only a few carnies at the end of the midway, and they weren't looking in my direction. I stayed low and started making my way around the sides of the booth so that I wouldn't be noticed. Most of them seemed too intent on looking for where I wasn't to see me, and I made it a pretty good distance before I was finally spotted. I had come out near the concession stand, smelling the fried Oreos and the funnel cake, and that was when somebody yelled and said they had found me. There is. I found him. That seemed to fill me with adrenaline, and suddenly I was running for my life. I had to make it to the parking lot. I had to make it to my truck. I had to get out of here while there was still an out of here to get to. Some of the bigger carnival guys tried to block my way, but I juked around them and kept running. The sounds and the smells of the carnival were jarringly nauseating at this point. They all whipped past me like a frantic merry-go-round, and I wasn't sure I was ever going to make it out. It all seemed like a little kid's nightmare more than anything, and every time I thought I had made it away, another one came looming up out of nowhere to block my path. For such a small carnival, there seemed to be a nearly limitless supply of carnies, and I rejoiced when I saw the exit, looming up as I passed a scrambler that was on the edge of the campgrounds. The gate was made of flimsy-looking wood, but the ticket taker, a man that we had paid to get into this place, was wide enough to block it with just his body. I didn't think I was going to make it through him. I didn't think there was any way, but when I hit him squarely with my shoulder, something I haven't done since high school, I bowled right over the top of him and just kept going. I made it to my car and was thankful that I hadn't locked it. I got in the driver's seat and crammed the key into the ignition, expecting them to start hammering on my truck at any minute. I expected them to just pick the truck up and move it. Some of them were big enough to do that, but they didn't. They didn't even touch the truck, and as I looked up at the carnival before screeching out of their little makeshift parking lot, I saw why. They were all arrayed around the rim of the carnival, just watching me from a distance of about 50 feet. They stood like worshippers in a church, waiting for their preacher to come back. Bailey was among them, looking disappointed but not angry. Her eyes seemed to tell me that I'd be back, and that was the last I saw of her as I went blaring out of the parking lot and back towards home. I was glad I had paid attention on the way in, otherwise I might not have made it. It took me a little while to get back, but I've never been so happy to see my home as I was when I finally came back to the front yard. I went inside, and it took about 20 minutes to stop my hands from shaking before I called the police and told the sheriff what happened. I don't know if he believed me, but he agreed to go look into it. The sheriff and I had known each other for quite a while, and I think he knew enough to trust my judgment and that I wouldn't make up tall tales for no reason. He said he would go have a look, and then if he found anything, he would let me know. And I had to be content with that for the moment. He came back to me that night, and it seemed that maybe he believed me at least a little bit. It also seemed like maybe he had seen something out there that made him a little bit glad that he hadn't been the subject of my story. We found something. It was no carnival, but it was something. It seems like they left it all out there. There were rides and lights still going, and you could smell all the stuff frying, even after they had put out all the fires for the night. There was nobody there, not a soul, but all of us felt like somebody was watching us. Wherever they went to, they went in a hurry. We also found some other things that lead us to believe you might not have been too far off about the sacrifice angle. There were clothes in one of the tents, clothes and wallets that had been stripped of cash, but not of identification. Some of those IDs are for people in the database, and some of them have been missing for a good long time. If your Bailey calls back again, let us know. We'd like to have a word with her about some of the company she's been keeping. I told him I would, but who knows if I'll still be alive to call in the morning. Bailey has a key to my house. She knows where I live, and quite a few of her things are still here. Who's to say she might not decide to come back anyway and see if her sacrifice is still here? I don't know. Maybe it was all just an act or a goof, but if you find yourself being courted by a strange woman who tries to lead you into adventure, be very wary. I don't know what or who they were trying to sacrifice me to, but it sounds like they might need another one very shortly. My neighbors say they've known my son for years. I've never had children. How old must he be now? 8? 9? I stared at my neighbor, unsure what she was asking. She read the confusion on my face. You're cute little guy. I saw him biking down the lane earlier. He must be old enough. For grade 4 now, right? Mrs. Babbage was a bit on the older side, but I never thought she had shown signs of dementia. Not until now. I wasn't exactly sure what to say. She proceeded to stare at me, tilting her head, as if I was the one misremembering. I awkwardly opened my mouth. "Oh, right, my little guy." She brightened. "Yes, he must be in grade 4, right?" "Sure. Yes, he is. What a cute little guy," she said, and returned to watering her flowers. It was an odd, slightly sad moment. I wondered if her husband had seen glimmers of this too. I could only hope that this was a momentary blip and not the sign of anything Alzheimer's related. I took the rest of my groceries out of my car and entered home. I had a long day of teaching, and I just wanted to sit back, unwind, and watch something light on TV. But as soon as I took off my first shoe, I smelled something burning on the stove, something burning with lots of cheese on it. The hell? I dashed over to the kitchen and almost fell down, partially because I was wearing only one shoe, but also because there was a scrawny little boy frying Kraft dinner. I let out a half scream, but very quickly I composed myself into the same assertive adult who taught at a university. "What? Excuse me! Who are you? What are you doing here?" The boy's blonde, willow-like hair whipped around his face as he looked at me with equal surprise. "Papa, what do you mean? I'm here. I'm here." He was a scared, confused child, and I couldn't quite place the bizarre inflection of his words. "Do you want some KD, Papa? Have some. Have some." Was that a Russian accent? It took me a second to realize he was wearing an oversized shirt that looked just like mine. Was he wearing my clothes? I held out my palms like I would at a lecture, my standard everyone settle down gesture, and cleared my throat. "I'm sorry, I don't know who you are or what this is." The boy widened his eyes, still frightened by my intensity. He stirred the food with a wooden spoon. "It's KD, Papa. Your favorite, chili cheese kind. Don't you remember?" His name was Dmitri, and he claimed to be my son. Apparently at some point there had been a mother, but he didn't remember much about her. He only remembered me. "You've been Papa my whole life, Papa." I tried having a sit-down conversation. In fact, I tried to have many sit-down conversations where I explained to Dmitri that that would be impossible. But it always ended with him clutching me with impassioned tears, begging me to remember him. The confusion only got worse when my mother called. "How is my grandson doing?" she asked. I didn't know how to reply. The conversation grew awkward and tense until eventually I clarified my whole predicament. "Mom, what are you talking about? I don't have a son. I've never had a son." My mother gasped a little, then laughed and scolded me, saying I shouldn't joke around like that. Because of course I've always had a son. A smart little guy who will be celebrating 9 this weekend. I hung up. I stood petrified in my own kitchen, staring at this strange, expectant Slavic child. For the next 10 minutes, all I could do was ask where his parents were, and he just continued to act frightened like any authentic kid might and replied with the same question, "How did you forget me, Papa?" My method wasn't getting me anywhere, so I decided to play along. I cleared my head with a shot of espresso. I told him my brain must have been scrambled from overworking, and I apologized for not remembering I was his father. He brightened immediately. "It's okay, Papa. It's okay." He gave me a hug. "You always work so hard." The tension dropped further as Dmitri finished making the noodles and served himself some. I politely declined and watched him eat, and he watched me watch him eat. "So, you're okay now? You're not angry?" His accent was so odd. "No," I said. "I'm not angry. I was just a little scrambled." His eyes shimmered, looking more expectant. "So we can be normal now?" A wan chill trickled down my neck. I didn't really know what to say, but for whatever reason, I did not want to say, "Yes, we can be normal now," because this was not normal. Far from it. This child was not my son. He started playing with his food and quivered a little, like a worried mouse seeking reassurance. "Everything will be fine," I eventually said. "No need to stress. Enjoy your noodles." To my shock and dismay, I discovered that Dmitri also had his own room. My home office had somehow been replaced by a barren, clay-walled chamber filled with linen curtains, old wooden toys, and a simple bed. The smell of bread and earth wafted throughout. I watched him play with his blocks and spinning tops for about half an hour before he started to yawn and say he wanted to go to sleep. It was the strangest thing, tucking him in. He didn't want to switch to pajamas or anything. He just sort of hopped into his straw, bed, and asked me to hold his hand. Dimitri's fingers were cold, slightly clammy little things. It was very bizarre, comforting him like my own son, but it appeared to work. He softened and lay still. He didn't ask for any lullaby or bedtime story. He just wanted to hold my hand for a minute. "Thank you, Papa. I'm so glad you're here. So glad you can be my Papa. Good night." I inched my way out of the room and watched him through the crack of his door. At about 9:30, he gave small, childlike snores. He had fallen asleep. Cautiously, I called Pat, my coworker with whom I shared close contact. She had the same reaction as my mother. "Harlan, of course you have a son. From your marriage to Svetlana." "My marriage to who?" "You met her in Moscow when you were touring Europe." It was true that I had guest lectured 15 years ago. Across the UK, Germany, and Russia, I was awarded a grant for it. But I only stayed in Moscow for 3 days. I never met anyone named Svetlana. "Don't be weird, Harlan, come on." Pat's conviction was very disturbing. "You and Svetlana were together for many years." "We were? How many?" "Look, I know the divorce was hard, but you shouldn't pretend your ex-wife doesn't exist." "I'm not pretending. I'm being serious. I don't remember her." "Then get some sleep." I sipped on my second espresso of the night. "But I have slept. I'm fine." "Well, then I don't get what this joke is. Knock it off. It's creepy." "I'm not joking. I'll see you tomorrow for the birthday." "Birthday?" "Yes. Your son's birthday. Jesus Christ. Good night, Harlan. Get some sleep." I didn't sleep that night. My efforts were spent scouring the filing cabinets and drawers throughout my house. I had credit card bills covering school supplies, kids' clothing shops, and costlier groceries. I even had pictures of Dmitri hung around the walls from various ages. It's like everything was conforming to this new reality. The harder I looked for clues to disprove my fatherhood, the more evidence I found confirming it. It was Dmitri who woke me up off the living room couch and said Uncle Boris was here. Uncle Boris? I peeked through the window and could see a very large blonde man smiling back at me. Behind him was a gaggle of other relatives, all speaking Russian to each other. "Hello, Harlan." The blonde man's voice penetrated past the glass. "We are here for birthday." They all looked excited and motioned to the front door. They were all wearing tunics and leggings. Traditional birthday clothes or something? I was completely floored. I didn't know what to do. So I just sort of nodded and subtly slinked back into my kitchen. Dmitri came to pull at my arm. "Come on, Papa. We have to. Let them in." "I don't know any of them." "Yes, you do, Papa. It's Uncle Boris. It's Uncle Boris." I yanked my hand away. It was one thing to pretend I was this kid's dad for a night. It was quite another to let a group of strangers into my house first thing in the morning. Dmitri frowned. "I'll open the door." "Wait! Hold on!" I grabbed Dmitri's shoulder. He turned away. "Let go!" I tried to pull him back, but then he dragged me into the living room again. Our struggle was on display for everyone outside. Boris looked at me with saucer eyes. Dmitri pulled harder, and I had no choice but to pull harder back. The boy hit his head on a table as he fell. Boris yelled something in Russian. Someone else hollered back. I heard hands trying to wrench open my door. "Dmitri, stop!" I said. "Let's just take a minute to..." "You're hurting me, Papa!" "Oi!" My front door unlocked. Footsteps barreled inside. I let go of my son and watched 3 large Slavic men enter my house with stern expressions. Dmitri hid behind them. "Is everything okay?" Boris peered down at me through his tangle of blonde hair. "Yes." "Sorry," I said, struggling to find words. "I'm just very confused. Confused? Why were you hitting Dmitri? The little boy pulled on his uncle's arm and whispered something into his ear. Boris's expression furrowed, but before I could speak further, a slender pair of arms pushed aside all the male figures and revealed a woman with unwavering, bloodshot eyes. Something in me knew it was her, Svetlana. She wore a draped brown sheet as a dress, with skin so pale I could practically see her sinews and bones. It's like she had some extreme form of albinism. Harlan, she said, somehow breaking my name into 3 syllables. Har-L-N. I've never been so instinctively afraid of a person in my life. It's like she had weaved herself out of the darkest edges of memory. I saw flashes of her holding my waist in Moscow, outside Red Square. Flashes of her lips whispering chants in the shadows of St. Basil's Cathedral. Svetlana held Dmitri's shoulder, then looked up at me. Just tell him it will be normal. Tell him everything will be normal. No, this is not happening. None of this is real. Barefoot and still wearing the same clothes as yesterday, I bolted out the back of my house and hurtled towards my driveway. Before the rest of my new family could realize what was going on, I hopped into my Subaru and stepped on the gas. As I drove away from my house, I looked back into my rearview mirror, and I swear it didn't look like my house at all. I swear it looked like a thatched roof hut. Back at the university, I walled myself up in my study. I canceled all speaking arrangements for the next week, saying I needed a few personal days. No one in my department knew I had a son. Nothing in my study indicated I had an extended Russian family. When I asked Pat about our phone conversation last night, her response was, "What conversation?" My mom said the same thing. With immense trepidation, I returned to my house the following day, and after setting foot back inside, I knew that everything had reverted back to the way it was before. No more framed pictures of Dmitri, no more alarming photo albums. And that clay-walled room where Dmitri spun tops and slept inside it was just my home office again. To this day, I still have no clue what happened during that bizarre September weekend. But doing some of my own research, I'm starting to think I did encounter something in Moscow all those years ago. Some kind of lingering old curse. Or a stray spirit. Or a Chernaya Vedma, a black witch disguised as an ordinary woman. Although I haven't seen any evil things bubble up around my place since, every now and then I do have a conversation with Mrs. Babbage, and she seems to remember my son very well. Such a cute little guy, always waving hello. Did you know he offered me food once? I think it was Kraft dinner. Thank you for watching Nightmare Proof. If you enjoyed these stories, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share to keep the nightmares alive. Have a story of your own? Send it in, and you may hear it here next time. Until then, sleep well if you can.